Hey, everybody, what's up? Welcome into the Athletic Fantasy Football Podcast on a Monday, you guys, in which we still have 4 games left to be played in this Week 15, in this first week of the fantasy football playoffs. So there are there are definitely plenty of people who have no idea if they are advancing to the semifinals or if their fantasy season is going to be wrapped up here in this Week 15. We do know it was one of the biggest letdown fantasy playoff weeks, and we're going to get into all that as we discuss on this show, on this episode of the Athletic Fantasy Football Podcast. Michael Beller here with you. I am joined, as always, by Jake Seeley. Jake, how are your playoff matchups shaping up right now?
No, I don't want to talk about it.
All right, there we go.
I already tweeted out that I understand everybody's pain. I was up 61-0 with Jonathan Taylor and Travis Kelce heading into Sunday. And then Najee Harris, Deontay Johnson, Amari Cooper, Cordero Patterson, the San Francisco 49ers defense, and Saquon Barkley got me a combined wonderful 40 more points. And now Justin Fields has to score 25 to save my season.
All right, let's do it, Justin. He can do that. He's got that club in his bag if he's going to run the way he did last week.
The fact that I started with Kelce and Taylor and need Justin Fields to save my season with those names, this is the epitome of 2021 fantasy football.
It really is, and you're going to be among, I would guess, a very small sliver of the population that could possibly lose with Jonathan Taylor and Travis Kelce, given what they did this week. Brandon Funston, also here with us, of course. Funston, how your matchup shaping up?
Yeah, it's a mixed bag. I got one that's still very tightly contested because I was going against Alvin Kamara and Mike Evans last night, and I was like a 25% chance to win. Suddenly, I'm like a 50-50 chance to win. So thanks to those guys. Unfortunately, in the other league, I decided to replace Lamar Jackson with Jimmy Garoppolo instead of Tyler Huntley. So that one's kind of sunk my battleship. But, who expected Tyler Huntley to be QB1 of ones? Yeah,
yes.
It's a little bit crazy.
And QB1 by a wide margin, depending, of course, on what the 4 games go the rest of the week. Maybe Nick Mullins will be QB1 when it's all said and done.
This is why I wish those rankings didn't lock at 1 o'clock and they would find something to be able to change them, because I had Huntley at like 19, and I wouldn't put him at 1. I wouldn't put him at 10. But if that was partly like Lamar Jackson might surprise us and play, and they might start the game with him. If I knew Lamar Jackson was out, I probably would have had Huntley around 12 or 13. I would have had him in front of Garoppolo just because of what we saw last week, the rushing side alone.
Yeah,
screw the Ravens and their terrible injury reporting and leaving that when I was so frustrated Sunday morning with the complete lack of Lamar Jackson updates, before the early games. And I was like, I had to make a decision. And at that point, I was like, well, there is this. I haven't seen him declared inactive, so I might as well go with Garoppolo here. And it was brutal.
You have to.
Absolutely brutal. I'm playing in 2 playoff matchups this week. It's looking like I'm probably going to lose both. I've got a sliver of hope in one if I get a big performances out of Justin Jefferson and Matthew Stafford for the rest of the week. But a big
tough.
A big Justin Jefferson performance would for sure knock me out of the other one because I'm going up against Jefferson.
So you have a Jefferson and you're going up against so you win or lose either way.
And the odds are that I lose both. That even a big Justin Jefferson performance won't save me in the one where I have him, and it will for sure sink me in the one that I don't. So chances are.
On the flip side, I was facing Eric Young in the flex leagues, and he had Mahomes and Kelce to start. I'm like, well, I'm screwed. And then everything started breaking right for me until, as you said last night with Funston, is like I had Godwin. And then, and that's now, I had a chance to overcome it because he had a lot of my bad luck, and now, so it's not going any good way. That's why I said I don't want to talk about it.
Well, hopefully, we end up coming up and out on the right side of at least a couple of our matchups, and we are among the Week 15 winners. But in the fantasy world, Jake, as we always start, winners and losers. Who is the Week 15 winner for you this week?
The people that want to say don't draft running backs because they all show up at the end of the year and blah, 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 blah. Running backs don't matter because you get the champion, Craig Reynolds, at this point. You can enjoy the living hell out of Craig Reynolds. And I will say this. Jokes aside with him, he definitely won again because even with Jamal Williams coming back, it looks like at worst case, they're going to try and see what he is potentially for next year and maybe a split. But I would say the real winner is we can finally trust the Bills running back. Like at this point, this is coming from our own reporting too at The Athletic, is that the team trusts him and he looks good. And actually, if you look at yesterday's carries, one carry that was a running back that wasn't him. The other was Isaiah McKenzie had some. Josh Allen had 3. Matt Breida had 1 carry. Nothing in the passing game. It was all Devin Singletary, Zach Moss inactive again in a game where you would have thought Zach Moss would be out there because they like to run him in games where they're in control. No Zach Moss. I'm still scared of Josh Allen at times, but Devin Singletary, I think, is now in the RB2 conversation, is something I never thought I would have said before.
I'll go with Amon-Ra St. Brown. He went from, a few weeks ago being like, the 12 targets, the 8 catches or 9 catches, whatever it was. It's a novelty. It's nice. It's interesting. And then the next week he did, at high volume again. And then Beller on Sunday, we had a ton of Amon-Ra St. Brown questions. I don't want to go back and do an accounting of how many people we told to not play him or we told some people
we were about down the middle, I would say.
That's what I was thinking as well. Yeah. But he became someone that was a legit option for playoff teams, and he came through with flying colors. So, 3 weeks in a row of this, I think we kind of welcome into like a next class of fantasy football wide receiver at this point.
Yeah, I think he's going to be someone who is pretty safely started over week 16 and 17 for managers who are still alive with him, with what he's done the last.
I start him over Cordell Patterson at wide receiver, which I just did. I was
3 straight weeks of double-digit targets. You guys, that's unignorable, and he's producing with them too. It's not like he's getting.
Did you just make up a word too?
I did. Amon-Ra St. Brown deserves it with what he's done the last 3 weeks. It's not like he's getting 12 targets and catching 3.
I'll kick it back to you, Beller.
Okay.
If I somehow survive, I'm telling you what I would do right now to see if you agree. I gave you my team, and if I somehow survive, Amon-Ra St. Brown was on the bench. Amon-Ra St. Brown is starting over Amari Cooper for me next week.
Wow, that's a big one. I don't know if I could go all that way. Would you go all that way?
Atlanta, Dak looks off.
Atlanta for the Lions get the Falcons.
Because here's why.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, hold on. You answer, Funston. I'm going to look up something real quick. I'm going to actually look where. Because I was just about to say I'm going to look where St. Brown's running his routes because of Terrell. That AJ Terrell could be a concern. So that's what I was going to look at. Video broken.
You got to look at. You got to take the names at this point. Did I break up?
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah,
Am I breaking up?
You're good.
No, you're good now.
You're good now.
Yeah. I don't know. You hate to go down with an always start your studs kind of approach. Amon-Ra St. Brown getting a dozen targets each.
Cooper hasn't been a stud since the middle of the season.
I know, but it's just what are you hoping from Amari Cooper to do what Amon-Ra St. Brown has done in the last 3 weeks?
Mm-hmm.
I think at this point, we're very well settled in. It's Atlanta. It's a better matchup. He's the guy that's producing right now. I think you got to make these hard decisions because you don't want to go down going with the name
60-30. 30% out wide, 60% in the slot for Amon-Ra St. Brown. Josh Reynolds is 90% wide. Khalif Raymond is 65% wide. So, I actually don't think – I think Terrell might be on Josh Reynolds a lot.
Yeah, that's what that sounds like to me. And so it's unignorable. Again,
and activate Patterson. Yes, Jiggles, as I said, inactivate him.
There are a lot of losers in week 15. Which one stands out to you the most, Funston? At least in terms of we could look back and say, whatever, player X had a horrible week, but it doesn't really mean something going forward. How about something that going forward for people who survived week 15 that they can make actionable for them in week 16 among the week 15 losers?
You changed up because I was just going to say the quarterback position.
That's fair.
It's eight of the so a quarter of the starting quarterbacks in week 15 didn't throw a touchdown pass. 1 out of every 4 didn't throw a touchdown pass, and we saw it, Tyler Huntley and just a bunch of randos are in the top 10 this week, and Tom Brady he's in the bottom 5. It's crazy. Taysom Hill and so I think it's a topsy-turvy quarterback position. I don't know, it's you take it with a grain of salt, I guess, for next week, and you just go back to how you thought about all these guys. But what a random week.
So Jiggles kind of set it up. I was gonna say Cordell Patterson. The fun's over.
It seems like it is, right?
27 attempts over the past 2 weeks. It was 11 for something disgusting. Wasn't even 20 yards last week or yesterday. So I'm just looking at and when they got to the goal line, it was just most inexcusable play. Like you run a toss sweep with him, and he's an upright like that. Just what are you doing? Like that just doesn't fit. And they brought in Allison, and then Mike Davis is getting like he's out there. What I'm trying to find a snap. 55% of the snaps the past 2 weeks. He's just not, and he's lining up. They're putting him back at wide receiver now too, because they're mixing him back out there. I think the fun for Cordell Patterson is legitimately done. I would put it this way. I said I had Cordell Patterson at wide receiver. If you have it, if you're on the sleeper app and you can play there, I would definitively, there's no question in my mind, bench him for Amon-Ra St. Brown. So it might be the odd man out there is just Cordell Patterson.
I mean, it was such a swift drop-off.
Automatically ranking him at number 12 at both running back and wide receiver in the weekly ranks. It's been auto for a while. So what is this?
It's just crazy how this came out of nowhere.
Getting a little too close to playoffs, and you want to pump the brakes on that? What's going on here? Like, what's the point in not using him at this point? I don't get it.
I can't explain it at all, but it's true. I mean, we're seeing it before our eyes, and it's just something I think we have to react to as we're looking at the next couple of weeks of these fantasy football playoffs. And I don't know if we ever see a week as this bad for star players across the board again. But obviously, we're hearing that the start your studs discussion coming up. Now, I don't want to say everything that happened in the past, including things that just happened 24 hours ago, but you look at this week, I guess the real question is, when do you go away? When does start your studs become something that is like just lazy and something that you actually maybe consider? Is there any sort of thing that we can draw off of week 15 that maybe is instructive to us as to when maybe you take a guy who has been starting for you, no doubt about it, and maybe now because of this or that you do bench him? Is there anything we can learn from week 15 in that way?
I think it's two-part. I think one is, what's your definition of stud? And I would say, first of all, that needs to be clarified in the fact that it's only ones. Like, I wouldn't even include twos. Twos are not studs. Ones are studs. First, second, maybe third round in drafts. Studs. Those are studs. You didn't bench Patrick Mahomes. You didn't draft him to bench him at this point. And look what just happened. Kelsey 2 weeks in a row. And not that anybody was benching Kelsey, but that's, 2 weeks in a row, 3 points. Nobody's benching Kelsey because those are your studs. But you can go further than that. At wide receivers, you're not benching CeeDee Lamb if he was, 2 bad games in a row. But studs don't include Amari Cooper. Like, they don't include wide receiver twos. They don't include DK Metcalf as not a stud at this point. And that's part of it. So first of all, clarify what studs are. But second of all, it hasn't been 1 or 2 weeks for Cooper and Metcalf. It hasn't been, 1 or 2 games for Cordell Patterson. Now it's 3 in a row. Now you can consider it, because he turned into a stud, but now he's not anymore. So you have to say, the more history, I wouldn't do it off in a reaction of 1 or 2 bad games. But with multiple games of scenarios, the quarterback play is affecting Cooper. It's a lot easier at wide receiver to bench what aren't studs, like fringe studs. But yeah, I think the biggest thing is if it's a running back who's getting 20 touches every single week, I still wouldn't. Like Nick Chubb has had a couple bad games, and the COVID situation aside for tonight's game. But I'm saying, you're not benching Nick Chubb coming off, his workload.
Yeah, I think another thing is that, we talk about all these guys. We don't have them all and intimately managing them all season long. But if you're somebody that has Amari Cooper and Amon-Ra St. Brown, and you're filling out your lineup in the postseason of your fantasy playoffs, how you feel about this, and you've been watching Amon-Ra St. Brown get a bunch of targets and produce, and you've been watching Dallas be a game manager kind of offense lately, and you've been seeing it, and you're the feeling of what feels right when you set your lineup, and in that case, it's probably going to be Amon-Ra St. Brown because matchup's good, the recency, production's good, it makes sense in that Lions offense. He was a guy they went out and targeted in the draft. He's talented. It's just it'll feel right when you're setting your lineup for the playoffs.
Narrow your definition of studs, take recent track record into account. That's how you end up making the right decisions, I think, or at least get yourself into a process that leads you into something you're going to be most comfortable with as you're looking at who truly qualifies here. So you can trust it. Exactly. Let's get into some of our game by game breakdowns here. I want to start out with the big upset of week 15, the Lions. This was never a game, and I lost my survivor on this. So 7 people left. I was one of those 7, and I am now out. I watched a lot of this game because of that. The Lions blew the doors off of them. This was truly never a game, and I think going into week 16, here you go. Perfect transition from what we were just talking about. You're starting Kyler Murray, but Jake, I mean, are you worried about what you saw from this offense without DeAndre Hopkins and what the receivers left were able to fill in?
No, because we've actually seen this offense without DeAndre Hopkins already before. So, and we've seen Kyler Murray have a bad game. The biggest thing to go back to a preseason bold prediction from Brandon was that Kyler Murray didn't want to run as much this year, that he was taking the easy under.
Yes, I was thinking about you, Funston.
And it takes away part of the game. I mean, this is a big thing. Like, this is why if Lamar Jackson was playing, I had him in the rankings. If playing, I didn't have Lamar Jackson inside my top 10. And we had this discussion on Thursday. It's like, you can't take away that facet of these kind of quarterbacks, that it's not just the fact that they run for fantasy. It's the fact of their running threat. Like, if you take away Josh Allen's legs, you're taking away part of what makes them so dangerous, because you have to account for that. And when defenses have to account for one additional factor, you take away part of their game. Well, if you can sit back on Kyler Murray, he's a good passer. Is he Tom Brady passer? No, who could also have a bad game, as we just saw yesterday. So you just can't take that dimension away. I'm still okay with it. If I have Kyler Murray, I'm still rolling him out there. I'm still trusting Christian Kirk and A.J. Green as wide receiver 3s. Christian Kirk actually finished as a top 12 wide receiver this week. A.J. Green was a solid wide receiver 3. That's all he was. But I'm still trusting all of them. The backfield's back to what we saw before, that split that we expected. So I'm just rolling them out there. But, yeah, there's no way. Put it this way. If Lamar Jackson's out and Tyler Huntley's starting, and I happen to pick him up, I'm still starting Kyler Murray. I'm going down with Kyler Murray just the same way I'm going down with Patrick Mahomes.
Sure. I was thinking about you, Funston, watching that game, because there were multiple opportunities Kyler had to take off and run. And I'm not saying take off and run and he was leaving 40-yard gains on the table, but there were definitely 6, 7, 9, 4-yard gains that he left on the table multiple times for things that ended up becoming nothing. It's not like he bought time and
do you
then
have a problem with the number 8
on the field.
You just what's wrong with 8? 6, 7, 9, 12? You just
just the way the brain's working this morning, I guess, Jake. But yeah, I mean, he very clear, running was a very obvious last resort for Kyler yesterday.
Yeah, and I think even it's exacerbated because I don't think he's 100% at this point, and so that's another thing. But now you're seeing he needs that. Otherwise, a god-awful passing Cam Newton can outproduce him in fantasy because he throws up to 70 rushing yards and the rushing TD. I mean, he's got to give you something on the ground, or else it's a big part of that. It's a big part of the package. So, I watch Kyler Murray, and there's a lot I don't like about him throwing the ball. If that's all he is, that changes the whole perspective. I mean, he hasn't run as much, but he's got to run some.
Yeah, it totally changes what this offense is capable of doing, and we saw that against the Lions yesterday. We already talked about Amon-Ra St. Brown. We talked about Craig Reynolds, both guys who are definitely on the fantasy radar. And again, I think Amon-Ra St. Brown, not to beat a dead horse, but 9 out of 10 Amon-Ra St. Brown managers are going to want to be starting him in Week 16 and Week 17. So long as they're still playing, St. Brown plays for you. Let's get Steelers and Titans on the board here, you guys. Steelers come away with a 19-13 win. Another gross game offensively for both of these teams. Deontay Foreman came through with a nice fantasy performance. You really got nothing out of anyone on Pittsburgh. This was a game that was dominated by the defenses. And Funston, what does that tell us about both these teams going forward? Because this is who they are for at least the remainder of the regular season. And, for Pittsburgh for the rest of the season, however long their season goes.
Yeah, it's gross. I mean, I guess it's the running backs a bust. I mean, Julio Jones had to do a double take. He literally gave you nothing.
Yeah.
And so the end of the mid-30s auto rank on Julio Jones will end after 2 weeks of poor results.
He's not even healthy anymore. Yeah. So there
exactly.
You go.
I thought this was going to be a smash spot for Deontay Johnson and for this passing game. So that's discernible because that's a Tennessee Titans defense that people have been picking on in the past all year long. And Roethlisberger's had some good moments throwing the ball in recent weeks. And what happened? I mean, that just kind of throws a monkey wrench in the whole idea of you're going to still use Deontay Johnson because he's always going to get the volume. But, man, that's going to have to temper your enthusiasm for how you thought he might be able to help you going down the stretch.
Jake, what are you doing with these offenses?
So continue. Same. Nothing. You got to start. If you survive, you got to start Najee Harris. If you survive, you start Deontay Johnson. You could bench Claypool, but there wasn't much to add to what Funston said.
Yeah, right. And Deontay Foreman is in there for us, but that's really the only guy on Tennessee you can trust. And I mean, that's gonna be true for the rest of the fantasy season, unless somehow we see Derrick Henry return in Week 17, which I don't know. I mean,
against San Francisco, though, I mean, you have to because running back's so thin. But the way that San Francisco chews up the clock, and then we just saw the number of opportunities for the offense.
Yeah.
I think Foreman's going to be an RB3 this week, as much as he's looked great. And I'm super happy he came back in that game. But yeah, it's going to be tough. You're just going against the 49ers, both from the defensive and chewing up the clock standpoint.
Yep, and that's a Thursday night football this week, Titans and 49ers. The Steelers get the Chiefs, and that leads us to Chiefs and Chargers. One of the games that actually did deliver from a fantasy perspective way back on Thursday. Mahomes doing his thing, Kelsey, Tyreek, Austin Eckler in a not quite 100% workload performance still gave us a very nice fantasy game. Keenan Allen showing up, Justin Herbert throws for 2 and runs for 1. This game delivered. This game gave us, it lulled us into week 15 being something that we could predict. And then obviously all hell breaks loose over the weekend. 2 straight good ones, though, you guys, for the Chiefs. Chiefs back? And insofar as they were ever gone, Jake?
Oh, yeah, I thought you were going to Funston first. Yeah, Chiefs, look, they're back, but the 3 people are back, and it's Mahomes, Kelsey, and Hill, but they never really left. I mean, you're going to have down games. They're fun. No, the one that I was going to say is, like, I just don't feel great about Clyde Edwards-Helaire still. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is definitively touchdown reliant now at this point.
What about Darrell Williams, too? That whole backfield didn't do anything.
Right. So it's just, it was a cake matchup, but at least we know Edwards-Helaire is the lead. So, but if he's not getting a touchdown, he's barely even getting into the RB2 conversation on yards alone because he's splitting, as you mentioned, with Darrell Williams. So yeah, you roll out the 3, but that's it. It's Mahomes, Kelsey, and Hill, and then you could have a conversation of benching Edwards-Helaire for Craig Reynolds. Like go back to the start of your studs. Edwards-Helaire is not a stud.
Not a stud at all. Yeah, are you benching him for Deontay Foreman?
No. Funston's just nodding.
I probably won't either. I'd rather have. I mean, you look at 13 points. It's the offense there. If it's close, I want the team that could hang 40, and I don't feel like Tennessee is in that position right now. So
yeah.
On the flip side, I kind of think if you have Austin Eckler, there was a little bit more evidence that Justin Jackson would be. It would still be a village, maybe, but he seems like he would be the biggest recipient of touches. I mean, that's what we just saw. Obviously, other guys would be mixed in, but if you have to just take one, I think we feel more solidified about it being Justin Jackson at this point.
Were you just about to do a take the village? It takes a village thing.
I almost did. I backed up. I think I'm ahead of my quota right now, so I had to pull back.
I will agree with that if you're sitting out there, you're an Austin Eckler manager, you're moving on to week 16, just in case Justin Jackson looks like the guy to back him up with. But you got to feel good about what got to feel good about what Eckler gave you in that game, coming back from the ankle injury, quick turnaround, and now he's going to have all that time off before the Chargers play next week. So it's definitely going to be Austin Eckler back in control of that Chargers backfield in week 16. It's getting in control of some holiday shopping here, you guys. Still have about a week to go here. Got to get into it. Bombas is going to help you out there. Bombas' mission is simple. Make the most comfortable clothes ever and match every item sold with an equal item donated. This holiday, when you gift Bombas to someone on your list, you're also giving them to someone in need. It is a give. Bombas designed their socks, shirts, and underwear to be the clothes you can't wait to put on every day. Everything they make is soft, seamless, tagless, has a luxuriously cozy feel. They are made from super soft materials like merino wool, Pima cotton, and even cashmere, which makes them the perfect cozy winter layers. There is multiple, and I'm not exaggerating here, Bombas gifts out there in my living room that we still have to wrap. Something for my brother-in-law. Hopefully he's not listening. Something for my wife's sister. Hopefully she's not listening. I don't think she is. She doesn't really play fantasy football. The point is, though, you can really get a lot of people on your list something great that they're going to love at Bombas. And, of course, socks, underwear, T-shirts, the 3 most requested items at homeless shelters in that order. That's why Bombas donates 1 for every item that you buy. Go to bombas.com/AFFP and get 20% off any purchase during their big holiday sale. That's BOMBAS.com/AFFP for 20% off. Bombas.com/AFFP. We've also got a new sponsor with us today here. It's Burrow. And, I live in Chicago, as you guys know, and it's been pretty slow going for the Bears for really the majority of my life. But even recently with Justin Fields, there's some hope here, and it's still been an ugly season. And so sometimes maybe you feel like it's easier just to move than to have to keep rooting for the Bears. But then you think about it, and it's a lot of hassles going to moving, especially with moving heavy furniture, taking it apart, putting it back together. But listeners of the Athletic Fantasy Football Podcast might know that there's a furniture brand that might as well be made for moving. That is Burrow. Easy to assemble, easy to move. Burrow's innovative modular design and super helpful instructions make assembling and disassembling your furniture quick and hassle-free. So when it's time to move, your Burrow furniture won't hold you back. Their credenzas are perfect for your TV with adjustable height interior shelves and cord organizing holes at each corner. Their award-winning Nomad sofa has a built-in USB charger, so it really is designed for the way that you live. Also very easy to shop for. You can ditch the warehouse and shop online. Everything is designed to work perfectly together in your living space, so all you've got to do is add it to your cart. Plus, Burrow's world-class support team is available whenever you need the help. Free, fast shipping on every order saves you an average of $100 on large items like couches. And right now, you can get $75 off your first order at burrow.com if you go to burrow.com/fantasy. That's Burrow, just like Joe, BURROW.com/fantasy for $75 off your purchase. Burrow.com/fantasy. Packers and Ravens, next game up to talk here, you guys. I mean, is anyone playing better than Aaron Rodgers? Maybe Tyler Huntley from a fantasy perspective in this game, but Aaron Rodgers is getting it done, and it's trickling down to the rest of the offense. We saw the Ravens really do what they could to take away Davante Adams, and they certainly limited him relative to what he typically does, although Davante Adams is not someone you totally shut down. But Marquez Valdez-Scantling was there again, going north of 90 yards, scoring a touchdown. Where does he sit for you, Funston, heading into week 16?
Wide receiver 3. I mean, you're going to get the air yards. We've seen how this goes, though. Some weeks those work out. Some weeks they don't. In this particular matchup, it's been a team that you've been able to pick on through the air. So it's still going to give me a little bit of fear. I don't know what the right word, but I'm going to have some hesitancy if I'm putting him in my lineup, knowing that there is a decent kind of floor that goes pretty low with him, but also the ceiling's looking pretty good as well.
Jake, looking at the other side of this game, I'm sorry to cut you off there, but looking at the other side of this game, obviously we all know what Tyler Huntley did. Lamar Jackson trying to make his way back from an ankle injury. In Week 16, the Ravens get the Bengals. It's a big AFC North matchup. Obviously, both those teams going into it at 8-6. It is a 1 p.m. Eastern kickoff, so we're going to know, probably not going to have to make a decision blind on Lamar Jackson. If Tyler Huntley gets the start again, where does he sit for you in your rankings?
He would be in the same conversation of, they basically Taysom Hill with a better matchup is that QB 10, 11 range right around there. We just saw the best of Tyler Huntley, but a lot of it came on the ground too. And so do you expect that same kind of success to carry over? You have to bake in some of the risk. He could finish QB1, he could finish QB20, as Taysom Hill has just proven. It's that's the downside of when you have these kind of quarterbacks. But yeah, he would be in the low end QB1 conversation, but for all intents and purposes, it sounds like Lamar Jackson should be fine.
Yeah, it does.
I just say Tyler Huntley deserves to be a starting quarterback in the NFL somewhere. There's so many bad quarterbacks out there. I mean, this guy.
You're stealing Emory Hunt's tweet from yesterday?
No, I saw him at Utah. I liked him coming out of college. I was surprised he didn't even get drafted. He was an undrafted guy. I mean, he fits obviously with Baltimore, but I was just looking it up. He's a restricted rights free agent next year, so you probably have to trade with Baltimore to make it happen. But I mean, he's perfect for their backup. But God, considering how bad
Baltimore probably doesn't even want to let him go.
Yeah, I was like, man, I think Pittsburgh would be interested in having a guy like that. There's a lot of teams I think.
I know you're just throwing out a hypothetical, but I got a feeling the Ravens aren't trading him in division.
No, exactly. There was a way
we're gonna have those conversations off season. I keep telling you, Watson. Pittsburgh's the one place where Watson makes the most sense with Tomlin and that's fan base, everything like that.
Well,
we're gonna talk about this. We're gonna talk about Jimmy Garoppolo too.
Gardner Minshew of Pittsburgh.
Oh God.
It would be as a fallback. It would be better than what they got behind Roethlisberger now. Might even be better than what they got.
Might be better than Roethlisberger.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it probably would be. Jake's right. We got to save something for the offseason. How about Dolphins and Jets? We are definitely not saving them for the offseason. Dolphins, 6 wins in a row from 1-7 to 7-7, and huge game out of Duke Johnson in this one. Myles Gaskin got 10 carries. I mean, on a per carry basis, looked good. I mean, he looked like himself. So, Funston, you take this one first. Let's hear from both of you on this. How are you handling the Miami backfield going into Week 16?
I don't know. I mean, this is so frustrating. Duke Johnson, really? I mean, He's down there in the goal line, getting goal line carries, and Miami is they're so unproductive all year, and so they're going to have to follow this scent, right? They're going to have to continue to use Duke Johnson a decent amount. I think in most weeks, like if Miami's splitting backfield touches, I don't want anything to do with them because they're not that. They haven't been that productive. So you look at this one instance where you face the Jets. Like I think you got to take this with a grain of salt. I don't know if I want to ride either of these guys next week.
And the only one I would actually turn to Gaskin because Saints and the passing option. That's the interesting thing is that Duke Johnson was used less on passing downs than Gaskin was. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. Played fewer snaps on passing downs.
He used to be like the quintessential receiving back.
The third down option. So with the fewer snaps and Gaskin's game back, where we saw Gaskin before the game, there were some reports saying that he was still feeling some of the effects. That's why I think maybe a little bit, as you mentioned, Funston, he did look good. But I would say Gaskin in front of him, but I don't want to start either one of them if I don't have to. But against the Saints, I would go Gaskin.
That's Monday Night Football next week, the Dolphins and the Saints. And what has
don't
become
wait.
like...
You don't have to wait anyway because what if they get COVID situations and it's Monday night? So just play people on Sunday and then you don't have to worry about it.
There you go. Gaskin went 10 for 54. And this is like a corollary to what you've been saying, Jake, all season long of when a team brings a running back from an injury and his replacement has been productive. Clearly, they think that guy is going right back in that role. It's not exactly the same here, but the fact that Gaskin comes back, he goes 10 for 54. I do think we should expect Gaskin to be back in that lead role, even though Duke did everything possible to make a case for himself in this game against the Jets. I have a feeling that a lot of backs would have been able to do that, which is not to take anything away from Duke, but still definitely something we got to think about. And I don't think we need to think about the Jets at all. We barely have to think about this game. Saints 9, Buccaneers 0. You lose Chris Godwin, you lose Mike Evans right off the bat. Then a little bit later, you lose Leonard Fournette. It was just the Bucs were like dead man walking at that point. And this is a team that has given them trouble for the last 2 years running. And so it felt like a game that once we saw it playing out, we knew exactly what was going to happen way before it actually happened. What are we doing with all these Bucs injuries? You guys going into next week, the Bucs play the Panthers. I believe that's a 1 Eastern kickoff also. So we're going to know. I think it's a 1 Eastern kickoff. But Jake, what are you doing with all these, with Godwin, with Evans, with Fournette? How are you waiting on these guys?
Well, Godwin's out for the rest of the regular season. So they announced that earlier this morning, and that Mike Evans isn't that severe. So if Mike Evans plays, you play Mike Evans.
Antonio Brown's coming back, too.
Not this week. Next week. Still can't.
They said week 6.
Can't come back.
They said week 16. Oh, okay.
No, 17.
Yeah, 17. So there you go. Mike Evans, you fire up. Maybe if you're desperate, you play a Tyler Johnson as a boomer bust wide receiver 4, and in the replacement of it, Ronald Jones is going to be in. Fournette's missing at least 1 game, if not 2 games. So Ronald Jones is now taking it again. Make sure these high-end backups where they have a clear lead role like that are not sitting out there in your waivers like Samaje Perine, which might even be a situation as well. But Ronald Jones, you're firing up. Mike Evans, you're firing up. Tom Brady, you're going right back to Tom Brady. Again, this is the Saints defense, which is one of the best. They also know how to play Tom Brady. That's shown that for years and years. And actually, during that game last night, if you were still watching through that misery, they were even talking about the fact that the D coordinator for the Saints, his name's slipping my mind right now, is getting
Dennis Allen.
Dennis Allen, thank you. Allen came into my mind. I was thinking the other Allen. But anyway, like that, they're talking about head coaching potentially next year roles just because of how good he's been able to play Tom Brady. And I'm like, really, we're doing that? We're giving coaching jobs off of playing Tom Brady? But I'm still playing Brady.
He's due for a second shot at the head coaching situation after the Raiders days.
You got the volume for Gronk. It just didn't connect. Tom Brady was just off in that game. So, I'm going right back to all those Buccaneers.
It's the Bradyest thing in the world. I mean, there are so many things that are so Brady. The Bradyest thing in the world maybe is that there would be one team that finally figures him out, right? And the only time he's beaten them is in the playoffs, right? They're 1-4 against the Saints the last 2 seasons, and the Saints are 4-0 in their regular season meetings. And the one win that the Buccaneers have against the Saints the last 2 years comes in the playoffs.
Hey, somebody did that before that.
If that's not Brady, I don't know what is.
No, it's Eli Manning. That's what happened when Eli Manning. Don't beat him in the regular season, only beat him in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, just beat him when it actually counts. We had this conversation a couple of times last year. I think we've already had it once this year, but I think it bears going over one more time after what we saw last night. Funston, Alvin Kamara playing alongside Taysom Hill. It did not look good yesterday.
No, it did not look good. The passing game wasn't there, and Tampa's typically been a defense that you can they give up a lot of production to running backs in the passing game. So it's been a mixed bag, and I think that's kind of what you have to expect. But, a couple weeks ago, Alvin Kamara looked great. So, there's not much you can do here. You have to play him. He is the guy that they will lean on. Mm-hmm. But then you get in a game where it's 9-0. I think he has to throw this out of the equation, just forget about it. And know, like Jake said, it's like he's one of these studs that gets, on a normal week is going to get you 20 touches. So you just got to play that guy. It's kind of the same with the Tampa guys. If they're healthy, you play them because they are the few that we talked about earlier that are studs.
They definitely are that. Let's get on to Bills and Panthers here, guys. Bills come away with a pretty easy 31-14 victory. Jake, you mentioned it right off the top. Devin Singletary, big winner in Week 15, 22 carries in that game and looked good getting them. We're talking about him already as someone who we're going to be playing next week. Like, where do you think, way before you've done your rankings, but if you just had to off the top of your head here, where are you going to be default slotting him as you start working through it later this week?
Be in the RB2 conversation, and really what it comes down to. Not a great matchup, though. They face the Patriots, so you have to worry about that. And it's not a snow game, at least as of right now. So you have to go back to that. But
it's good for the Bills. That's pro Bills right there.
Yeah, so low end, that's what I was going to say. Yeah, low end RB2 as of right now. We'll see how these things play out. But the fact is, it's going to come down to the reason he's even that conversation is just the volume play. Mm-hmm. It's, again, bad situation. But, hey, look, Jonathan Taylor just destroyed the Patriots, so,
Yeah, but Devin Singletary's not Jonathan Taylor, but but still, I think he's got to be in there too. I think he has to be, and that's in the weather was great for the Patriots in that matchup, and anything.
But see, I tell you right now, Ronald Jones versus Devin Singletary. I would rather start Ronald Jones.
I'm there with you, Funston. Ronald Jones versus Singletary, and then also when you're default starting things out, where's Singletary going to be for you?
Probably, I'm guessing late 20s at the running back position.
So more like a RB3 sort of guy.
Like a higher end RB3. I think that's probably where I'll end up. Just imagining, right now. But I think that's about the right range. And yeah, I agree. If it's Ronald Jones is the lead guy, I'm going Ronald Jones.
Yeah. On the other side of this game, we did, as you mentioned, Funston saw another bad real life game, but useful fantasy game out of Cam Newton. Panthers get the Bucks next week. Is he in that same low end wide receiver or quarterback one discussion because of what he can do as a runner, or are you just really trying to get away from him in that matchup?
Well, I think we saw with Taysom Hill, who's not dissimilar to Cam Newton, and what he brings to the table is that's the the worry right there. That's what you could get. And Cam Newton, good Lord, I just saw him tried to throw a quick out into the flat, and it was like a torpedo on the ground, like 5 yards behind the guy. It was so bad. But then he gives you 70 rushing yards and the rushing touchdown, and you're like, God. If you play Cam Newton, you can't watch it. I always say that, you just can't watch it. But there's, I think, 150 yards, a passing TD and a rushing TD and 70 yards is always on the table for Cam. Yeah. That's what's frustrating about it because he is such a poor real-life NFL quarterback at this point.
Some of those throws that he makes are like top spin line drives with a 101 mile per hour exit velocity.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. So to your point, I'm probably going to hedge and put him somewhere between 12 and 15. And that makes him usable for somebody. I'm just guessing right now. Uh-huh. You have to account for that upside, but like I said, you could get the Taysom Hill game.
Yeah.
And you don't want that.
Yeah, definitely could get that. Jake, you on the same page there?
No. There's no way on earth. No, I'm not starting Cam Newton. No, not at all. Period. Ever.
Okay. I can get down with
who's
that.
Who's the worst quarterback you would start over him? Would you start Mike Glennon over him?
No. Because he's not even going to start. We got the Frominator yesterday. We're not even. Mike Lennon's done. We're done.
The Frominator.
Houston's got. Oh no, never mind. I was going to say Davis Mills. Davis Mills looked good. People forgot about in college that Davis Mills was a highly regarded. He was supposed to replace Andrew Luck as the next Andrew Luck. Mm-hmm. But no, they get the Chargers. So
yeah.
Justin Fields against Seattle. I would definitely start Fields.
Yeah,
sure. What about someone like Ben Roethlisberger?
Who I'm looking
at Jimmy Garoppolo, where you're not getting any. There's no rushing upside whatsoever.
I'm doing Garoppolo for sure against Tennessee. I know they've been playing better against the pass of recent, but I would definitely go Jimmy Garoppolo. The biggest thing with Cam is it's not even just the rushing upside. If he doesn't get a rushing touchdown, and then if he looks terrible, PJ Walker, they opened the door to Sam Darnold coming in at quarterback.
Yeah. No, the thing I would be most worried about is PJ Walker at any point Matt Rule could say, all right, get in there, PJ.
I would legitimately you know how much I hate him, but Goff against Atlanta? No. Yeah. Jared Goff against Atlanta. I would think long and hard about Goff over Cam Newton.
I mean, if you're making an argument for Amon-Ra St. Brown as an easy starter and for Josh Reynolds as like a fringy wide receiver 3.
It's just, I mean, when it goes bad for Goff, it goes golful, as the joke is. But I mean, when it goes bad for Newton, I mean, legitimately.
Just because his name doesn't rhyme with awful doesn't mean it doesn't go golful for him too.
I'm just questioning, Jake, when you do your rankings, is this going to be one of those things where Cam Newton will show higher in your QB rankings, but you wouldn't actually follow like your projections?
No, so my rankings are my real rankings. The projections might show different. That's what you're saying. So projections, exactly. He might rank at like 16 projections, but then when I rank for I'll probably put him at like 20, 21. Yeah, something like that.
I'd be interested to see.
Mike Glennon, you could leave the QB position open and do better because he scored negative points. Everybody in the show did better than Mike Glennon did in fantasy this week.
I mean, it was a brutal game just all around. And like Dak Prescott, guys, we talked about it last week. We're like, all right, when do we start talking about like Dak being – it's game manager Dak. Game manager Dak is back, and that is bad for him, obviously, but it's bad for Cooper. It's bad for CeeDee. It's bad for everyone in Dallas. And I think it's something that we have to be looking at with some – real concern right now. Cowboys get Washington next week. What are you doing with these guys, Jake? With him, with all the – I mean, you're playing him, but how do you feel about him? Are you playing Dak?
Nah, I think that's a question you could have. I mean, go back to the studs thing. He hasn't been a stud since he injured his calf. And part of his we talked about that last week, and I even speculated, said, is it the calf still? But you have to think it's healthy at this point. But, it's been the Cooper inconsistency. He missed time with the COVID situation. Lamb missed a little bit of time in there, or wasn't healthy 100%. Was Dallas says, as you mentioned, Washington at home. It's Sunday night. And like that, almost like Jeff says this a lot when I do the show with him, and he's like, take more decisions out of my hands. Like we talk about that all the time. It's like if you have 3 close options, and this is why I don't like 2 tight ends at like the tight end 12 to 15 range, is because you're usually going to pick one and stick with it, take a decision out of your hands. You might just say start somebody else instead of risking that something happens in the Dallas game on Sunday night before you find out. But I think that Dak could still be a low-end QB1. He's still a QB1 based on the upside of what he could do, but now he's in the conversation of like the floor is super low, so he's more of a high upside, low floor guy at this point of his career, or this season, I should say.
This season, yeah.
I'll say the running backs look good. Even Tony Pollard with the plantar fascia injury, he looked great, and I think Zeke looked pretty good as well. We know he's banged up, and Tony Pollard always looks like he has more life to him. For the life of me, I would love to know what the base defenses are for those guys, because it seems like Tony Pollard gets more yards before contact than Zeke does all the time. And so, but they both look good.
See, I'm looking at the 4 p.m. games, and assuming everything looks right and we get Lockett back either tomorrow or for next week, I mean, Russell Wilson over Dak Prescott. We just been waiting for him to be healthy at this point, even though Russell Wilson doesn't even run much anymore anyway.
Yeah. But that, I mean, I think that would be a non-controversial position to have Russ ranked over Dak with what we've seen from Dak for really, like you said, Jake, since that Broncos game where he first came back from the injury. Just hasn't been right for him for that entire offense. 49ers and Falcons. Let's talk about that game for a second here. 49ers cruise with a 31-13 win. We already talked about Cordell Patterson and how, the crazy thing about Cordell Patterson isn't necessarily that he's no longer producing the way he was earlier in the season. It's how swift the fall was. I mean, it was weeks ago that no one even thought twice about him being not only in your starting lineup, but like having top 10 running back expectations for him. And now we're talking about him being just as obviously a guy you sit on your bench. I mean, can you remember anything like this, either of you guys?
No.
I'm sure there's
crazy,
something out there, but yeah. I have a short memory for all this stuff. But, I mean, he did get 11 carries. He just didn't do anything with them. And he had, he had a couple catches. So, I mean, 13 touches is not that far out of the realm of what he's typically getting. Just was completely unproductive. And like we said earlier in the show, it doesn't make any sense that the guy was most consistently giving you offense week in and week out, and, that they just kind of start to shy away from that. I mean, who else you leaning on there? I mean, it's nothing. Yeah. It's like the Tennessee Titans after that,
You're scoring 13 points. That's what you're doing.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's exactly what you're looking at with that team. And on the other side, 49ers, right? It's running back, Kittle, Deebo Samuel every week. Every week, those guys are doing it for us. And we'll see what happens on Thursday night. Hopefully, Eli Mitchell managers obviously hoping they get him back for this one against the Titans on Thursday because we see what happens as San Francisco running back one. Jeff Wilson putting up a monster game against the Falcons here in Week 15. Got just a couple more games to talk about first, though. One more word from our sponsor. If you've ever wanted to make your home feel safer, there is no better time than now. This week, our friends at Simply Safe are giving Athletic Fantasy Football Podcast listeners 40% off their award-winning home security system. Simply Safe has everything you need to make your home safe. Indoor and outdoor cameras, comprehensive sensors, all monitored around the clock by trained professionals who send help the instant that you need it. Simply Safe was named Best Home Security System of 2021 by U.S. News and World Report. You can easily customize the system for your home online in just minutes and get free custom recommendations from Simply Safe as well. No long-term contracts, no commitments, just an easy way to start feeling a little bit more peace of mind. Take advantage of Simply Safe's holiday sale and get 40% off your new home security system by visiting simplysafe.com/athletic. Again, that's simplysafe.com/athletic for 40% off your entire system. All right, guys, 3 more games that I want to get into. Texans and Jaguars, the first one of those 3. Texans win this one 30-16. But on the other side, James Robinson, he's back, huh? Back to James Robinson being good for fantasy purposes. What do you know, right? You give your best player the ball 18 times, and he does something with it. Who would have thought? Who would have thought that was possible? How you feeling about James Robinson the rest of the way, Jake?
They were really good. It really comes down to, Carlos Hyde was inactive too, so they're down to Dario Ngubwale. So you look at Jacksonville this week, and Jacksonville heads to the Jets. So even if Carlos Hyde is back, you still feel really good about that. But I would say, look, what was it, 85, 90%? That's what we saw last year when they had no other option. So, probably falls maybe into like the 75% range. But again, against the Jets, we just saw what happens when you can get significant work against them. So I feel great about them. But I would have been a little bit more concerned if they were facing somebody even middle of the pack, like the Saints would have been. Actually, they're one of the worst potential. But that's what I'm saying. Is like I want to overreact to just one game of no Urban Meyer. The offense still has a miserable offensive line, rookie quarterback that's struggling beyond belief, and a passing game that has nothing.
Oh, the editor in me is coming out, Beller. Is that you spelling Jaguars? Jaugars.
Jaugars.
But Robinson could have had a great case to be the winner of the week or the people that have him because he gets back into a volume lead guy just in time for Houston and the Jets back to back in the playoffs. Like,
not bad.
Good timing. If you're gonna, if you're gonna go wrong for a while, do it before the playoffs.
Can we just call them the winners? They got rid of Urban, so the Jaugars are very much better now.
And they are in line for the first pick now?
No.
Right?
No.
They have two wins, right?
Yeah, but
Detroit has 2 wins and a tie.
Yeah, so they're better than Detroit.
And they're better than they're worse than the Texans. By better you mean better in terms of the draft.
Yeah. Okay, better. So they have they got the first draft pick by losing to the Texans yesterday. Yeah. So yes, there you go.
And I would assume they can not lock it up, but come awfully close if they lose to the Jets also. They can't lock it up, but
it would depend on what Houston does the rest of the way. Houston's got Chargers, 49ers, Titans, so they might lose out.
Speaking of Houston, do you guys care at all about Rex Burkhead's volume in this game? 16 carries?
Nope.
Yep.
Well, we're 15 weeks in. We wouldn't have to have cared about a Texans running back all year long. Has there been one? Maybe Mark Ingram in week what? When he had
Mark Ingram when he was
or something?
Yeah.
Even that wasn't even productive. But if you just ignored this position all year long, you wouldn't even know it. It's like if a tree falls in the forest and you're not there to hear it. Doesn't make a sense.
Colts and Patriots back on Saturday night, you guys. Colts win this one 27-17 despite 57 passing yards from Carson Wentz in this game. I don't really know if there's anything we draw that's fantasy actionable from this one other than maybe it's Jonathan Taylor and no one for the Colts on offense, right? I mean, you're starting Jonathan Taylor, obviously. And I don't think anyone else in Indy even draws a second look, do they?
Yeah, Michael Pittman. It's the matchup, dude. This is what was going in. It's funny. Like, I had Pittman in my mid-low 20s the entire week, and I saw the consensus come closer and closer. Like, it started out at the beginning of the week, I was like minus 11 under consensus on Pittman. And interestingly, the consensus came around. Jackson has been that like, we're talking, take the name. I always say that a lot. That's kind of my cliche, take the name off the jersey. Put Gilmore on the back of the jersey and understand the respect that should be given when you're facing this defense, and that's what it comes down to. So, yeah, who also got tossed out of the game? Pittman. But starting against Arizona this week, Pittman's right back into the wide receiver 2 conversation. He is the other person of relevancy.
Okay. Funston, do you draw anything out of this game? Obviously, the Patriots
the Ramondre Stevenson, what was it, 10 for 36? That was a major disappointment.
He got game scripted out.
He got game scripted out. But, what it'll do is Damian Harris is back. He'll be back in the lead role, and we'll get a watered down version again of, it was just great Denver. To see like the opportunity for a true lead role.
I kind of hope he's not back. It's Buffalo. Well, I don't want to split backfield against Buffalo.
Well, yeah.
No, I know, but that's the problem. That's the issue. I think he will be back. He wasn't that far off from just following the injury all week long. So
yeah, they took that up to the last possible moment before they ruled him out. So I would imagine he'll be all right for this game against Buffalo. Huge game in the AFC East with those two teams getting together. Winner will be in first place in the division. One more game, guys. Bengals and Broncos. Bengals win this one 15-10. I mean, that's my thought when I think about either of these passing games.
Well, it really comes down to it. Well, the perimeter receivers, Denver Broncos, Patrick Surtain, understand that you beat him in the slot.
Well, sure.
That's all.
But still.
It's like of course, nobody expected. I didn't expect it to be that bad. And that's the big thing is, like, you just expected it to be better in that game. The biggest thing out of this is, thank God, Teddy Bridgewater also released from the hospital this morning. It's like that. So, like, that's great. But, yeah, it's the running game for both, and you have to go and watch the Joe Mixon injury. Yeah. That's really, there's not a whole lot to take out of this. Is don't start a Broncos wide receiver, and then the Bengals should hopefully rebound this week.
Yeah, Funston, in a world where Samaje Perine is starting for the Bengals against the Ravens next week, where is he in your running back rankings?
The Ravens are, they're a pretty tough defense to run against. And, you look at this previous meeting, this was a 400-yard, 3-touchdown game for Joe Burrow. So they have the ability to air it out.
Perine had a productive game that week, didn't he?
What's that?
I said that Perine had a productive game against the Ravens the first time they played, didn't he? I want to say. Perine went 11 for 52 with a touchdown and caught one pass for 23 yards.
Yeah, but the 11 carries, I mean, this might be one of those games where you don't get the game manager script out of Cincinnati.
Mm-hmm. Devin Singletary or Samaje Perine?
I'm probably going to go slightly in the Perine.
Wow. I was not expecting that.
Perine or Craig Reynolds?
Craig Reynolds. By the way, do you know who's a graduate of Kutztown?
Only because I looked it up last night. There's one very good NFL player who went to the same school as
one very
as
good
Craig
fantasy analyst.
One very good fantasy analyst? Is that you?
I went to ODU.
No, Mike Clay.
Oh, really?
Mike Clay. Yeah, he's a.
You know who else?
Who? Oh yeah, Andre Reed.
Andre Reed.
That's right. Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah. So to answer the question, Craig Reynolds 2 weeks in a row has looked really good, and honestly, this Detroit offense has been good all year long at getting production out of the backfield, whether it's been DeAndre Swift or Jamal Williams or now Craig Reynolds. So yeah, I mean, if it's Craig Reynolds again, I'm in. I ran with him on a team that's not going to see next week, but it wasn't Craig Reynolds' fault.
Yeah, 37 carries and 195 yards for Craig Reynolds the last 2 weeks. So definitely putting himself on the radar, especially if Jamal Williams and DeAndre Swift have to miss one more game. Speaking of one more game, we actually have 4 more games in Week 15. What are you guys watching for? We got Browns, Raiders, Bears, Vikings later today. Tomorrow, Eagles, Washington, Rams, Seahawks. Just one thing that you're watching for in these games, Jake.
Oh, well, 2 things real quick. I was looking up during the last break. Then, the Antonio Brown, actually, for the person that mentioned in the chat, he is back this week because he had the suspension. Well, because the suspension happened, I didn't think that week got included. It did, though. I didn't think that's why.
I was looking at a news note that said Week 16, and I just held off because I was like, oh, maybe it's wrong.
We were both, I guess, in the same place. When it happened in Week 14, I assumed it was starting after that.
So did I.
So anyway, it actually got in before that. So it's 14. So he is back. Anyway, that being said, so Antonio Brown for everybody. So Antonio Brown, Mike Evans. So watching for this week tonight. I want Justin Fields to somehow score 25 points. I am watching that. Tomorrow, I'm hoping Tyler Lockett comes back, but I'm really interested to see Darrell Henderson as he get his lead, probably 80%. No, but I do think he steps back into the lead, and this might be more of a 60-40 type of split.
Yeah, selfishly, I'm interested in seeing if Rashad Penny can double down on what he did last week. I'm obviously not to that level, but the Rams have always been a tough defensive matchup for the Seahawks. So if he does anything serviceable, that's probably a major win for.
If he has another 100-yard game, Rashad Penny or Saquon Barkley, start your studs. Do you do it?
If he does it against the Rams, I will go with Rashad Penny.
That's a good one.
That's Bears and Lions coming up the next few weeks for the Seahawks after this. So
very nice.
Selfishly, I need Josh Jacobs and David Montgomery to go crazy. So I got it. I got those two sitting in a lineup that
possible
needs it.
After what was a very screwy Week 15 Sunday, Justin Jefferson going up against a decimated Bears secondary. No Jalen Johnson for the Bears tonight. I think we could see an all-timer from Justin Jefferson. I think we could see something.
Get 20 yards.
I mean, this is just with no Adam Thielen, with the Bears injuries, with the Bears susceptibility to deep plays already. I think we could end up seeing,
is like a Flipper Anderson, like 300 yards.
Yeah,
game?
I think we could see something big from Justin Jefferson tonight. Loving the over 93.5 receiving yards prop that he's got available on BetMGM right now. So hopefully everyone who needs something to go right for them tonight and tomorrow, hopefully if you're watching the show, you do end up getting that. We thank you for joining us on this episode of the Athletic Fantasy Football Podcast. For Jake and Funston, I'm Michael Beller. Good luck to everyone still fighting for their playoff lives the rest of Week 15. We'll be with you all week long here to talk through Week 16 and get you ready for the fantasy football semifinals. Thanks for listening. Talk to you soon. See you.
The other weird thing was